Hello to all my dear followers. Today I want to welcome you to a new fanfic for the channel that will be uploading in chapters between long fics. Welcome to the first chapter of What If Kurama Was Sent to the Past to Train Naruto. If you want a second chapter, just hit the like button. Now, without further ado, I'll leave you with the fanfic.
Kurama was not a being that most would consider slow. Powerful? Yeah, sure. Arrogant? He could probably give Orochimaru a run for his money. But despite his fondness for chakra bombs that could level mountains, or just, sitting on people, he really knew his way around a battlefield, and could be surprisingly tricky. If something caught his attention, his focus was instant, laser-like, and okay, maybe he was a little hard to wake up. This time, though, waking up was a little stranger than usual. He didn't seem to be in a sewer, for one. Also, he didn't seem to be laying down. Did Naruto switch with me? I hope he knows I actually don't know that many ninjutsu. And what's the deal with not telling me before doing something this stupid? Okay, that was likely the exact reason he didn't tell me. Just exactly is going through your head, you stupid brat. His head crashed into the ground. It wasn't particularly gentle. Naruto? What the hell are you doing in there? I was asleep. What's going on? Bindings tightened around him. Hard enough where he could actually feel that they were chains through his fur. Kurama growled. This was getting nowhere fast. Worse, he didn't even need to open his eyes to know that there was more than one being right in front of him that hated him with immense passion. Or Naruto. It was hard to tell. Lots of people tended to not distinguish them, which was annoying as hell. As long as it isn't those damn Uchiha. I hate those stupid control freaks, and I don't want to hear a word of it, Naruto. Still, he got no response from his. Well, Kurama would have once called him a warden, but after he removed the seal, and, trusted him a little more than was probably wise, the only thing keeping him actually bound was that he really didn't want to kill the kid. Especially after Naruto stopped taking his chakra without asking. So maybe friend really was the correct term, as much as he wanted to gag when thinking about it. These two sources of hatred in front of him. They certainly didn't move like they were at full battle strength, so it was unlikely that Naruto just decided to mess with him and make him fight instead. But something was definitely up with Naruto right now. He usually responded right away. Based on the chains, which were uncomfortably familiar, his enemy probably had talent with sealing. He growled again. If those bastards sealed Naruto, well, they certainly weren't going to get the same treatment as his friend. He didn't open his eyes. He didn't even try to stand up, to break the chains that were binding him, even though they didn't even feel like they were close to the magnitude really needed to seal him. No, why would he give away an advantage like that? Especially when they decided to line up so perfectly like that. Minato was confused. The sensation was not totally unfamiliar to him, as his wife caused this state frequently. But battle was always a different matter. He always knew what to do. But not now. The Kyuubi had simply stopped. He had broken that man's control over the beast a minute prior, and all that it had done was close its eyes. This wasn't anything close to normal behavior. It barely reacted to Kushina's chains either, which was completely baffling. Yet that was no reason not to take advantage of the strange situation. The unfortunate truth to the matter, the truth that Minato did not want to admit, was that Kushina would likely die soon. It was really rather simple. She was a Jinchuriki, and her Biju had been extracted. While it should have been possible to reseal the creature, especially bound as it was, Kushina was already deathly low on chakra, and would be immediately overwhelmed. Not to mention that his own chakra was low enough after teleporting several Biju bombs. In order to seal the Kyuubi away completely, he would need her help, making the situation only worse. The beasts were beings of chakra, though. Perhaps if he were only to seal the beast in parts. The attack came quickly. Too quickly, compared to all the other attacks he had defended against previously. On reflection, he was actually unsure whether his body's refusal to move was the result of genuine surprise, or his subconscious realizing that Naruto was directly behind him, and would have easily been caught by the attack. But that was irrelevant at the moment. He no longer had the time for 3 seals. He barely had time for one. Kushina. She tensed behind him. Of course. The beast seemed to freeze. The pressure of the Kyuubi's immense claw through their bodies ceased, and even Kushina's chain seemed to settle oddly on the creature's fur. Its eyes were open for the first time, and Minato almost faltered. Kushina's chains shattered as his seal activated, the beast contorting as it flew into Minato's infant son. Its departure was their death knell, its claws still real enough to tear through the rest of their bodies. But all he could think about was how strange it looked, for an expression like that to be on a face that evil. What could cause such a creature to feel such horror? Kurama found himself once more in a cage, though that was almost irrelevant. He was used to that. He knew where he was now. He knew when he was now, as impossible as that seemed. And so, due to his own stupidity, he had cost Naruto his parents once again. He had almost cost Naruto his life, simply because he assumed that malice meant an enemy. He tried to excuse the error by pointing out to himself that it was a perfectly reasonable assumption to make, given the recent shinobi alliance and a great many people accepting Naruto, and even himself, as if not a friend, then an ally. Anybody else was trying to literally end the world. That thought rang hollow when he realized that a simple half-second of thought and observation would have meant Naruto could have grown up loved. Grown up as a hero, like the one he had become. Or at the very least, not treated like Kurama was. But the room was dark, the water was cold, and he would have a long, long time to think on exactly what went wrong. And how he was going to fix it. Naruto smiled a lot. He smiled in the morning, as he looked around his dingy apartment and made cup ramen. He smiled as he ran through the streets of Konoha, getting his justice in little ways. And he smiled when he got caught. When someone paid attention to him. Sometimes, when they smiled back, it even reached his eyes. Kurama had heard many times from Naruto what his childhood was like. He had even taken advantage of his anger and grief many times in an attempt to wrest as much control as he could. But back then, he had barely paid attention unless Naruto's emotions were unstable enough for him to take the opportunity. His anger burned brightly, almost as much as the first time he was here. But the anger was not for his sake this time. He wanted to destroy the village even more now. Not the village itself, but about 19 out of 20 of the residents he wanted to kill slowly and painfully. But Naruto had taught him something, before all this. Older, wiser Naruto hadn't tried to get rid of his anger. Not completely, that is. Naruto was angry all the time. But he couldn't just kill everyone that he was mad at, even though he had the power to. Kurama would have probably ignored him if he had just done his usual "it's wrong" routine. No, he had given a better reason. The most satisfying revenge was to prove them wrong. Directing the anger to make their entire world, their entire life, turn on its head. Don't destroy the body. Destroy what makes them an enemy. Destroy the hate. Naruto had done that to him. Done it for him. It had taken a long time, but he, both of them, gained a friend. Oh, and he totally had permission to gloat about it afterwards. Naruto didn't do that step as often as he should, but Kurama thought it was important, and he had agreed, albeit reluctantly. Even if it was directed at him. He thought it was only fair. So this time, when he had finally had enough of watching Naruto's rejection and mistreatment, instead of trying to exploiting his anger to try and destroy as much as possible, he talked. Naruto. The boy himself didn't seem to hear him. This was to be expected, of course. He didn't know of his unwilling passenger, and had not received any sort of meditation training. This would take time. He had time. Naruto. Naruto smiled, and he didn't know why. There was just something strangely good about everything. Of course it was a good prank. All of his pranks were good pranks, even when he got caught. But it didn't feel like the prank. It was like the sun shone just a little better, the air was just a little fresher, and his chest was just a little warmer. It felt almost like someone wanted him there. He wasn't even close to Ichiraku ramen either. Perhaps this happiness came from the news he had gotten in the mail earlier today. He had been accepted into the academy. He was going to become a ninja. And someday, he would be strong enough to become acknowledged. And someday, he would become Hokage. He would be respected, just like the old man. Of course, he still had to wait even longer. Lessons wouldn't actually start for 3 more months, which felt like absolute torture. So yeah, Naruto didn't really understand why he was so happy all of a sudden. You don't have to wait. Naruto froze with his hand on his apartment door, then quickly looked around. There was nobody in sight. Hey! Show yourself. I'm not a ninja, brat. I'm inside you. Naruto scrunched up his face. You aren't making any sense. Only ninja hide themselves. I'm in your head, idiot. Oh. Don't get it. Am I going crazy? Should I go to the hospital? If you were actually crazy, why would you ask the voice in your head for help? It doesn't matter anyway. You aren't crazy, unless you count the normal Naruto brand of crazy. I'm sealed inside you. Naruto scratched the back of his head. I don't understand, but, what do you want with me, anyway? Kit. I want you to become Hokage. What? But you'll need a lot more than just the stuff you learn at the academy. There are no shortcuts, and it will be hard work. You need to be more than a ninja. You need to be an exceptional one. So I'm going to make you one. Who are you? Why are you doing this for me? The voice was silent for a while, and Naruto started to open his front door again, but the response stopped him again. An apology. A promise. Perhaps a returned favor. Pick whatever you feel like. Naruto closed the door behind him, still clearly confused. My name is Kurama. Kurama. The boy sounded out the word carefully. Thank you, I guess. Don't thank me just yet. You have a long day tomorrow. Kurama hadn't spoken to him for the rest of the evening, and Naruto soon forgot of his weird new head sensei. By the time he had actually woken up the next day, Naruto had shrugged the whole thing off, far more invested in planning his next series of pranks. And waking up. He was almost as bad as Kurama when it came to mornings. And he still had to eat breakfast. Kit, you're not eating cup ramen for breakfast. Naruto jumped, slamming his head against the open cabinet. Ow. Ow wow. He ducked down, rubbing at the sore spot. Apparently the conversation yesterday wasn't just a weird dream. Naruto registered what he had actually said. Hey. Ramen is the best. Kurama grunted. Debatable. That Ichiraka ramen place might be okay, Naruto, but that cup ramen crap is not. You need food with nutrients. Food with energy. Naruto looked distinctly offended. Ramen has plenty of energy. He looked back down at the cup in his hand. Well, maybe this stuff doesn't quite taste as good, but still. He shuffled his feet. I can't afford to go out to eat every day. The implied statement was not lost on Kurama. No other merchant let Naruto anywhere near their shops. Even the few that tolerated him clearly overcharged for their products. But to Kurama, there was a very simple solution. Then it's time you learn to get your own breakfast. Grab a kunai. Kurama-sensei. I don't think my practice kunai are going to be very useful. He had bought all sorts of equipment as soon as he had heard of his acceptance into the academy, but battle-ready tools were not something most shopkeepers would sell to most any academy student, not without permission from their instructor. And that wasn't even accounting for everyone's utter disdain for Naruto in particular. Easily fixed. Go to the training grounds. Naruto rolled his eyes, but grabbed his keys and made his way outside. He had barely locked the door and started out in the direction of the academy before Kurama stopped him. Not those grounds, idiot. You're only going to find sharp kunai on the actual, graduated shinobi training grounds. How was I supposed to know that's what I was looking for? I thought I was just gonna ask for a sharp one or something. Brat. You're going to look for a discarded one. Naruto growled. Fine. Are you gonna tell me why we're looking for one that's no good anymore, or are you just gonna make me guess? I don't even know why I'm listening to you in the first place. You say you're going to help me be Hokage, but I'm already gonna do that. You say I can't eat ramen anymore, call me an idiot just like everybody else, and then just tell me stuff without explaining anything. The voice was silent, and so Naruto ran on seemingly alone. He briefly wondered how mad the weird voice actually was. Even though this Kurama was even less polite than he was, there was something in the voice that he had only heard in Old Man Hokage. Naruto knew that he was obviously in the right, but an odd sense of guilt settled around him for a reason he couldn't comprehend. So when the voice actually returned, he jumped slightly. Perhaps you should not listen to me. He almost skidded to a stop in the middle of the street, but had just enough of a mind to duck into an alleyway instead. What? Why? I'm not a ninja. Okay, but you said you were gonna make me one. I'm not human. Well duh. That would be really weird. I don't think another human could fit in my head, unless they were really, really tiny. Shut up. I wasn't finished. Naruto closed his mouth. I am the Kyubi no Kitsune. The what? The growl in his head was almost deafening, and actually kinda hurt. Naruto. I attacked Konoha. I killed hundreds. I killed your parents. Naruto's stomach lurched. He grabbed a fistful of his shirt, pressing his fist hard against his chest. What? Why? No. He stumbled into the wall, sliding down to sit roughly on the ground. Naruto, lift up your shirt. He didn't, but already knew what was there. It was that weird tattoo. He didn't know where it came from, and never really questioned why it was there, but somehow it seemed more important now. That is me. The previous Hokage gave up his life to seal me into you, to save the village. Naruto did not know about this yet. It would be taught at the academy, and even then, Naruto would only have paid attention to what sounded interesting. Naruto looked up from the ground, staring vaguely up at the sky. You, don't seem very happy about it. That was not what Kurama was expecting. It is a natural consequence of my actions. I no longer resent my prison, though it does get boring. Naruto blinked in confusion for a few seconds. Oh. No, that's not what I meant at all. I meant attacking the village and stuff. You sounded sad. I suppose. More angry that I made the same mistake twice. He braced his hands against the alley wall, pushing himself to his feet. And you still want to make me an awesome ninja, right? Yes. Then you don't have to say anything else, you know. And with that, he started to run. Naruto stared at the dead rabbit, kunai in hand. The knife itself was chipped in places, and probably not battle-ready, but it was still sharp. Sharp enough to kill a rabbit. But at this point, he was kinda unsure what to do with it. Eat it, idiot. Naruto looked at the rabbit dubiously. But, there's, like, blood everywhere. I don't think I'm supposed to eat blood and stuff. The fox in his stomach scoffed. Never was a problem for me. But if you're that squeamish, just cut a bigger hole and let the blood drain out. Pretty simple. Naruto hesitated. Damn it, Kit. Do you want to be a ninja or not? It's just blood. Shinobi deal with blood all the time. He dragged the kunai across, letting a lot more blood spill out. Good job. Now just wait a few minutes, and you can eat some breakfast. Naruto glanced at his stomach. Shouldn't I cook it or something? Don't bother. Cooking only affects taste, and I've always preferred raw. Besides, if you're looking to become a ninja, fires only make it easy for the enemy to find you. It's a dead giveaway. He glanced back at the rabbit. Okay then. Rabbit wasn't all that bad, Naruto decided. It wasn't as good as ramen, naturally, but it wasn't bad. A little bland, but a lot more filling than instant ramen. And his new sensei assured him that he would actually get hungry less often. Which if it was true, would be awesome. Also, it was free. Meaning it was even less expensive than the instant ramen he got from the grocery. The only real bad thing is that it was hard to catch a rabbit. It had taken him almost 2 hours to finally catch one. But apparently that was just part of training. If he couldn't catch a rabbit, he wasn't nearly good enough to be a ninja. That's what Sensei had said, at least. But Naruto knew better. He really meant that when he got better at being a ninja, getting food would be a lot easier. So he had a much more upfront motivation for training. Speaking of training. Sensei, when are you gonna teach me cool jutsu? I don't have hands to do any hand seals. So I never really paid attention to ninjutsu. And genjutsu is particularly distasteful to me. What? I'm not gonna learn anything cool. Training your body is equally important. Same with learning to use weapons properly. Besides, your academy teacher will show you ninjutsu. Naruto's shoulders sagged. I'm not complaining. I understand that this stuff is important, but, you really can't teach me anything else. Why bother to pay attention if you can't even use it? He rubbed the back of his head. I guess so. It just sucks, though. I did pay attention to a style I never expected to be able to take advantage of. Naruto's head snapped up. Fuinjutsu. Sealing jutsu. What's that? It's what traps me inside you. Naruto made a face. I don't think I want to know how to do that. It is very useful to defeat an opponent who is stronger than you. Then I'll just train to be stronger. Naruto heard a deep sigh from inside him. You will not always get the chance. Regardless, that is not the only thing that fuinjutsu are used for. Some lower-level techniques include sealing equipment and supplies in a scroll for ease of travel and producing explosive tags. Naruto's focus sharpened. The explosives interested him regardless, but his sensei's insistence on him carrying supplies for every scenario was a large contributing factor for his constant soreness during training. And as you get better, it is possible to entrap and immobilize targets for easy retrieval or disposal. Naruto translated that into new prank opportunities and easy hunting. A true master can do almost whatever his imagination produces. Alright, you've sold me. It is not an easy art. It requires study and precision. Naruto hesitated for all of 3 seconds. No, if it's gonna let me do awesome stuff, then I don't care. Alright. Go buy some paper, ink, and a brush. When you can say that each of your letters are exactly the same as the last, wake me up. What? Just do it, moron. Do you want to learn seals or not? Naruto tucked his chipped kunai back into his belt and rubbed his sore muscles. Well, at least I get a break from the training. I just wish he wasn't an ass about it. I can hear that, you know. Naruto jolted upright. What? I'm sealed inside you. I can hear your thoughts, especially when you practically shout them like that. Oh. You don't have to talk to me out loud. Right. Naruto walked all the way back to his apartment before he realized that he still needed to buy the supplies. There. I finished. Naruto put the brush down onto his kitchen table, the only table actually suitable enough for writing. Not good enough. Naruto gaped. What? That's my best writing yet. Good writing is only half of what I wanted. It needs to be consistent. If you can write the same thing 20 times in a row, with only minimal differences, then I will let you advance to the next task. Naruto groaned. That's so unfair. I am not being any more difficult than necessary. You will not succeed at my next task if you cannot complete this one. Mistakes in sealing often means losing fingers, or worse. I don't want to have to heal your injuries every 2 minutes. Okay. It still sucks. If it makes you feel any better, I believe you are close. He sighed. I know. It's just. I understand why, but I really wanted something to show before I started the academy stuff. Kurama could already tell where this was going. You already have something to show off. Why do you think half your day has been physical exercise? Why do you think I've been lecturing you on your hunting skills? Your taijutsu is not unremarkable, and while your stealth could still use some work, you are improving at a steady rate. I just want something really cool. And there's only, like, a month left. A month usually felt like an eternity to someone as young as Naruto. And as active as he was, it usually felt even longer. But he was starting to understand just how much time training took, especially when it took this much study. Naruto could almost feel Kurama-sensei's smile. I have no doubt you will. Look at your paper. His hand had been idly writing, almost completely out of habit. Naruto wasn't as observant as his teacher was, but the past 15 lines looked almost identical. Now you have one final task. Go steal something someone else has written on. You need a handwriting sample for this. Naruto just gave a simple nod and rushed out of his apartment. He was a lot faster than he was a few months ago. Not only was he quite a bit stronger from his training, but Kurama had taught him a few useful techniques. One was how to find his own chakra. That was pretty easy for Naruto. Less easy was directing it to different parts of his body. It was all worth it when he realized that he could expel a little with each footstep to push himself forward. Like tiny explosions or something. And his first attempts really were like small explosions. It took a while for him to not immediately stumble and faceplant, and even longer for the little boosts to be consistent enough to not send him into a wall. But being able to jump really high, and even run along the roofs like the other ninja was wonderful. That more than anything made him feel like his dream was closer than ever before. And of course, it made it just that much easier to escape after a prank. As long as he didn't prank other ninja, of course. Not that he would refrain from doing so if they were being particularly stupid. So it meant that as he grabbed a stack of papers from a market stall, owned by an idiot, of course, it was pretty easy to lose any pursuers and make it back to his apartment within a minute. All right, Kit. Good job. Now sit down, and copy his style. Naruto frowned. Why would I do that? He gasped. Is this so we can pretend to be that guy and get him in trouble? Sounds awesome. Not sure what that has to do with sealing, though. He heard a chuckle from his stomach. Not exactly. I have no doubt that you'll find great use in this skill. But for sealing? This is just a further test of your ability to copy things precisely. There are more than letters used in sealing, you know. Naruto nodded. Right. I think I get it. After this, I believe you will be ready to make your own explosive tags. You mean those things they wouldn't let me buy yet? Exactly. Naruto studied the paper more intensely than he had anything in his life. Boom. The training dummy exploded into splinters, which Naruto dodged. He looked back at the three others in a similar state. It wasn't a terrible loss. The training field was equipped with hundreds of them for this exact purpose. I think we can safely say that you've mastered the exploding seal. At least the basic one. There are more kinds. Yes, but you need to know more theory. I thought you were more interested in the storage scroll. Naruto scratched the back of his head. Yeah. While he had bought a pouch for his weapons and materials, he hadn't bought a proper pack for that exact reason, and carrying around everything Kurama insisted he carry was tiresome. All he had was a rough civilian handbag, and he hadn't even bothered to decorate it. Over the last 3 months, Kurama had even convinced him that his ninja apparel could use some color correction. Naruto still couldn't deal with only wearing dark blue and green, but he had been convinced to tone down his bright orange to a dull red that reminded Kurama of his own fur. Kurama noted with enthusiastic amusement that this had caused many of the adults no small amount of alarm. Naruto had to admit that this had drastically improved his stealth, and made it a lot easier to hunt in general. Before learning the storage seal, Naruto, I would suggest that you make a few extra explosive seals. I believe 50 will fit into your tool pouch with relative ease. This wasn't nearly as dangerous as most civilians assumed. As with all sealing techniques, they had to be armed with chakra before use. And then activated. Explosive seals required quite a lot of chakra to arm if they were to be any use in combat. Even after activation, this particular version of the seal had a 3-second fuse. Naruto had no trouble with the chakra part of things, unlike other ninja who might need to use the explosives, but actually making new ones in combat was not an option. He wasn't exactly a fast writer. Not when he had to be that precise. Naruto sighed. All right, sensei. That's going to take ages, though. I'm sure you can finish before class begins tomorrow. Can't you? Naruto rolled his eyes. All right, sensei. Don't you use that tone with me. If you want to use any of the advanced techniques, you need to get faster. I just wish I could have more time before I start. Don't you want to learn ninjutsu? He grumbled. I do. He shook the bag by his side. I just feel like I should be more prepared. And not drag this clunky thing everywhere. I like that you are thinking of this as a mission. But many more aspiring ninja are less prepared than you. You can bring a bag to class. And if I'm practicing ninjutsu all the time, will I even get this scroll thing done in time? Then you will have to work harder. It will not take you 4 years to learn it, even with distractions. Fine. Where is that determination from before? Are you going to be a ninja or not? Naruto shook his head. Of course I am. I'm going to become Hokage, you know. He retracted his fist from the air. But with all the stuff you keep saying, I do not tell you the truth to discourage you. I only prepare you for the difficulty. Naruto sighed, his smile relaxing. Thanks. I don't know what I'd do without you. Kurama fell silent, now significantly more uncomfortable. Without me, you'd have a loving family, training from the best ninja in Konoha, and all the recognition you wanted. The first day of class was interesting, to say the least. Naruto never expected that something could be both exciting and boring. Okay, he hadn't expected for that particular feeling to extend to something other than Fuinjutsu. Iruka-sensei was, well, he was startlingly similar to Kurama-sensei. He acted plenty nice when teaching, but fall asleep in class once. Well, long story short, he had 2 teachers yelling at him at the same time. Kurama had told him that this math stuff was important too, but without Kurama constantly rephrasing stuff in the textbook or the lecture, all it would do was make his brain feel fuzzy. The forehead leaf thing was exciting because he got to tell Iruka that he already knew how to do it, but frustratingly, he wasn't the only student who already knew how to use chakra. And apparently it was also to teach focus and concentration. Which was boring. Even worse, Kurama seemed to agree with him, even though last time Kurama made him do this, he stopped really fast and moved on to more interesting stuff almost right away. But since it was kinda hard to keep the leaf there for a long time, maybe both his sensei had a point. The shinobi rules were also kinda boring. And Kurama said that some of them didn't matter as much, and could be broken, so he didn't see the point. He really wanted to tell Iruka-sensei this, but then he'd have to explain why, and Kurama always told him that nobody could know about him. Attacking the village was a really serious thing, after all. But since learning the rules meant he could actually start sparring with other students, he made an effort. Besides, some of the rules were already things that Kurama was trying to teach him. Though he said them with a lot less confusing words. Classes stopped well before dark, though, which meant more training time. And infuriatingly, more study, since apparently, sealing objects into things was significantly more complicated than sealing chakra into something, like the exploding tags. Even more infuriatingly, Kurama wouldn't just let him copy another person's seal, since it was always slightly different based on what you wanted to store. He had to know what each individual symbol did and how it all fit together. Even what order to write them in mattered for some stupid reason. He didn't even have that much time to learn it, since Kurama still insisted on doing physical training. And still wouldn't let him eat ramen. Well, he did let him use up the ramen he still had in his pantry so he could have an easy lunch at the academy. But the only rest he got was actually sleeping. Okay, maybe the class itself lets me rest a little. My muscles aren't that sore. Exactly. Naruto found it extremely unfair that his sensei could literally tell if he was lying and just trying to get a break. You aren't a very good liar, Kit. It's one of the things we need to work on. Having a sensei that could literally read your thoughts was even worse. Whatever you say. The academy classes were getting better, though. And worse at the same time. He actually managed to impress Iruka-sensei when it came to the beginner Bukijutsu, even though he definitely wasn't the best in the class at throwing stuff. Kurama had to remind him that other students were trained by their families before attending as well. And even though Iruka criticized his forms, he was almost top of the class in taijutsu. They still were doing that stupid leaf exercise thing, though they did start teaching about the basics of hand seals and more exciting stuff. They had more stupid classes like history that Kurama insisted were important, too. Hokage needed to know about a lot of uninteresting stuff. And apparently, he wouldn't be picked even if he was super strong if he couldn't pass any written exams. Aside from the lesson on the previous Hokage, it was almost the second week of classes before the history class actually got any interesting. He got to learn of the attack of the Kyubi no Kitsune. He almost felt embarrassed to hear it secondhand, but it always felt awkward to ask it of his sensei. The actual attack wasn't told in that much detail, but he learned about the other tailed beasts, something Kurama definitely hadn't mentioned. I mean, if I had brothers, I'd probably at least have mentioned them in passing. We aren't on the best of terms, Naruto. Still. Kurama. Did you know anything about my parents? There was a significant pause. Did you seriously not notice? One of them was mentioned in this very lesson. Naruto groaned, are you seriously going to be like this today? I'm only trying to make you think things through like you should. Your father was a sealing master by the name of Minato. Naruto clamped his hand over his mouth to prevent himself from shouting in the middle of class. Like the fourth Hokage. Kurama projected an intense feeling of irritation, and Naruto cringed a little. I already told you that he sealed me, didn't I? No, you just told me the Hokage did. You didn't say anything about my dad. Oh. I apologize. It's hard to remember what you do and do not know. Did you know my mom too? Not much. Her name was Kushina Uzumaki, so it is likely that your father learned his sealing arts from her. She has some annoying chakra chains. From what I heard, she was a firebrand, but I don't have much experience with her in particular. Oh. Naruto took a deep breath, thank you, Kurama. Naruto. Pay attention. His head whipped up to the front of the class. Sorry, Iruka-sensei. Now, as I was saying. It was only a matter of time for his behavior to become a little suspicious, though. Most people tended to avoid him, just like the rest of the village, and Naruto was very used to that, but it was only a matter of time that someone noticed that he spent every recess in the corner with a scroll and ink. Still, none of the students really cared quite enough to actually approach him. Kiba, the only kid who consistently beat him in taijutsu, looked over quite a few times, but it was Iruka who was the first to actually come over and see what was going on. Naruto, I never see you take this many notes in class. Naruto, who never actually noticed him approach, jumped. Iruka-sensei. Sorry, I should have paid more attention. I guess I could take more notes. Iruka put his hand to his forehead, smiling a little. No, you don't have to, Naruto. You are doing fine when it comes to your tests, despite your little sleeping habit. You're just more of a physical learner. That's okay. He pointed to Naruto's scroll, where lines of Naruto's oddly precise handwriting filled almost half the paper already. The letters themselves were rather small. But I've never seen you write that much before. Are you an author? Naruto blushed. While Kurama had told him to keep his sealing skills relatively secret, he also said that telling people like your sensei or the Hokage the truth was important. No, Iruka-sensei. I'm just trying to make a storage scroll. Like, Funya no Jutsu. Iruka frowned. That doesn't look much like a storage scroll. Yeah, I'm still learning what each little thing does. Then I can store things better and I'm not really confused when I get to the complicated stuff. Naruto carefully didn't mention his other sensei, Kurama. There were some things only the Hokage was supposed to know. If he asked. Basically he just wouldn't lie to him. You're still terrible at lying, Kit. Iruka nodded, impressed. While sealing arts weren't necessarily restricted to a certain rank of shinobi, it was a rare specialization, at least nowadays. The few people who knew what they were doing usually weren't actually full ninja, they made their money creating the basic supplies for everyone else. It was a difficult art, regardless. Especially without a formal teacher. Naruto was a good student, if a little unconventional. But he wouldn't have expected him to take an interest in something like this. Especially something as non-awesome sounding as a storage scroll. Good job, Naruto. If you need help with anything, I can probably find someone with some experience in seals for you to learn from. At the same time, most people who made the scrolls actually didn't know anything much past the functionality of what they were making. He just smiled. That's okay, Iruka-sensei. I have a pretty good source of information, you know. Iruka just shook his head and smiled back. That's Naruto for you. Author's note, the compose key, Linux, is a lifesaver in fics like this, which require different people thinking in the same head. I can type characters like and, alternate quotation marks, and other symbols like. And copyright with absolutely no issue whatsoever just by combining the components. The academy stunk. And unfortunately, Kurama knew the reason. He couldn't do anything about it either, other than just have him train more than he already was. The problem was that whatever his written exam scores were, and no matter how good he was at taijutsu or bukijutsu, he still couldn't create a proper clone. Due to just how little chakra they required, Naruto couldn't manage to separate the proper amount. He would overcharge the thing and it would either fail to form, or become barely distinguishable as Naruto. Of course, Kurama knew that in these cases, it was possible to graduate the academy with special conditions. Rock Lee was one such student. Last time, it was only because Naruto's ability to take a written test was terrible that he never was able to take advantage of this. But Kurama also knew just how much the multi-shadow clone technique suited both Naruto's fighting style, cunning, and massive chakra reserves. Of course, one method to get this technique would be a very simple talk with the old man Hokage about the situation, an explanation of his chakra and why it would not be dangerous for him to use, and a request to use that technique as a substitute test for graduation. It might take a bit of convincing, but it wouldn't be too difficult. Kurama wanted to give Naruto a final exam of his own, though. Besides, asking the Hokage directly would likely put suspicion on Naruto for even knowing that the technique existed in the first place. He really wanted to see if Naruto could actually pull the mission off without detection this time. And if he failed, he would have a pretty good excuse for doing something that would otherwise be very illegal. Mizuki was still a teacher at the academy, a person students were expected to trust. So when Mizuki approached him with the alternate method, he remained silent in Naruto's stomach and let things play out as they did the first time. This time, well, the village didn't notice. Naruto passed his stealth test. And now that Kurama was there, talking with him, he had additional advice in completing the jutsu once he actually had it in his hands. Kurama didn't have much experience with ninjutsu in general, but this was Naruto's signature jutsu, even more than the Rasengan. He knew how it worked, inside and out. They even had enough time to take a look at the 8 trigram sealing style, just to show Naruto how complex seals could get. Kurama almost immediately regretted doing this, as it was very difficult to pull him away in time before Mizuki caught him off guard. And apparently, enough of Kurama's teachings had hammered themselves into Naruto's head that he actually realized that something was wrong with Mizuki when he asked for the scroll. As it was, shortly after negotiations broke down, a very beaten-up Mizuki was carried back to the village by 4 clones while Naruto ran to report to the Hokage with the actual scroll of seals. And to apologize for stealing it, of course. Kurama just marveled at just how weak a chunin could be. Of course, surprise and a good bit of arrogance definitely had something to do with Naruto's victory, both times. But still, he didn't even have to give Naruto any help. If Naruto didn't have the 8 trigram seal eating up his chakra to hold him, it would have been even easier. Needless to say, the Hokage had been surprised, seeing Naruto return with a forbidden scroll that he didn't even know was taken. GG. Sorry for borrowing this. Naruto swung open the glass case, reinforced with seals, and dropped it in with a loud thunk. Sarutobi Hiruzen just barely stopped himself from spitting tea over all the paperwork on his desk. What? The case itself was just barely out of his line of sight, given the large stacks of paper all over his desk, but it was still quite a shock. Naruto rubbed the back of his head nervously. I thought it was a test, you know. Mizuki said it was, like another way to graduate. Hiruzen stood up rapidly. Mizuki, you say? Don't worry, I beat him up and stuff. Some of my clones should be here in a bit, unless they find some of those ANBU guys before they get here to give him to. Shadow clones. So he already managed to learn a jutsu. Did he find anything else in there in that short amount of time? How long ago did he take the scroll? But that wasn't as important. Naruto. How did you get that scroll in the first place? Did someone help you? Naruto just stared at him, confused. No. I was just quiet and stuff. You looked really busy. Hiruzen had, of course, felt his presence in the room. Naruto didn't visit as often as before, but he was one of the few that he allowed almost free rein in his office, and he was very used to his presence. He sometimes saw Naruto with his homework occasionally. Every child needed someone to be with every once in a while, even though Hiruzen himself didn't have much time to spare for the boy. But that wasn't the unusual part. When Naruto was younger, he would take advantage of his inattention all the time to pull pranks. I meant all the alarms and safeguards. How did you get it out of the case without triggering everything? Naruto gave him a sheepish grin. Oh, you might have to reapply a lot of the seals. I, broke a lot of them. He raised an eyebrow. Without triggering the alarms. Naruto just nodded. I've been learning a lot about what all the symbols and stuff mean, and how to not make things explode. I still don't know what half of them did, but I thought I'd give it a try, you know. See if I could figure it out. Unlike Iruka, the Hokage knew the specializations of all the shinobi in his village. And while it was heartwarming to know that Naruto was following in the footsteps of his parents, even accidentally, and apparently his instincts for the art were quite good, the only seal master still alive, Jiraiya, was not currently in the village. Naruto, where have you been learning seals? Naruto's heart dropped into his stomach. This was the one person that Kurama told him that he should tell the truth to if asked, but he didn't expect it to be so soon. Kurama-sensei, Hokage-sama. Hiruzen paused. Not at the name, though he did not recognize it, which was a problem in itself. But Naruto hadn't actually called him Hokage-sama for years. Maybe ever. Naruto felt guilty about something. His thoughts firmly on the subject of Mizuki's betrayal, he asked the question. Who is he? Does he live in the village? In answer, Naruto just pointed at his stomach in silence. Directly at the 8 trigram seal under his shirt. He very carefully set his tea back on its saucer. What? Hiruzen asked calmly. Naruto still felt the tension regardless, and immediately was on the defensive. I know he attacked the village and stuff, but he's a lot different now. And, nicer? Well, he's at least nice to me, you know. Hiruzen wasn't entirely sure what to think. An angry and raging Kyuubi was to be expected. A Kyuubi bent on turning Naruto against the village was everything he feared, though he took solace in the notion that it was unlikely for Naruto to be old enough for the beast to make contact. A Kyuubi that was acting nice in that same effort was even less likely, but infinitely more dangerous. A Kyuubi that was not only trying to be friendly with Naruto, but teaching him the very thing that locked it away to begin with. Teaching him a name that even he hadn't heard. Of course, the name could be fake, but it was still alarming. And yet Naruto knew that it was indeed the Kyuubi, and that it had attacked the village on the day he was born. Perhaps even who died in the attack, based on the odd expression on his face. It didn't make sense even for a schemer like the fox. He had a healthy fear now, even more than before. He was fairly certain he could no longer count on anything he could have planned in advance. He had no idea how the fox would behave anymore. Though it did not take him long to formulate his next question, and his next test. At least Naruto still seemed to trust him in particular. About your sealing, what is it that you want to learn? What is your goal? He had watched Naruto since before he attended the academy. Unless something significant changed, he wasn't a boy to do something unless he had some sort of goal in mind. Like becoming Hokage, as difficult as that path would be for him. And it would give him a good idea of just how much the Kyuubi had influenced the boy. Well, at first, I wanted to figure out how to break my seal. Hiruzen struggled to keep his face neutral. But Kurama said that was a bad idea, and wouldn't work anyway. Somebody named Jiraiya has the key. And nobody would trust him anyway unless I got really strong where people thought I could handle him. Curioser and curioser. Even he didn't know that. Handle him? What do you mean? Well, like, strong enough where he wouldn't take over if the seal wasn't there. He looked up from his stomach. That was the plan, right? Not one I knew about. What makes you say that? Well, the seal was made loose. What? His efforts to remain neutral had failed utterly. I looked at what the seal was supposed to look like in that scroll. Naruto jabbed a thumb at the case behind him. And it was loose. Not by that much, but it looked like it was done on purpose. Kurama thinks so too. Hiruzen grumbled internally. It would have been nice to be informed of these plans. But his anger faded when he realized who it was that made these plans, and Jiraiya's state of mind directly after the incident. If Jiraiya had even known. The plan could have easily been spur of the moment on the fourth's part. So, what is your plan? Well, Naruto blushed. I know it's kinda stupid, but I wanted to make a new seal. One that, like, projects his chakra from my body so he doesn't have to be trapped anymore. Hiruzen's eyes sharpened. But, like, only lets us give each other chakra, but prevents taking it. So people don't get really worried and stuff. I see. So if the Kyuubi actually went on a rampage, Naruto could literally just deny him access through his body. Though the phrase, give each other chakra, was still a little worrying. But even Kurama doesn't know how to do that, so I don't know how I'm gonna do it. And I'd still need the key, you know. I'll send a message to Jiraiya. Naruto gasped. That doesn't give you permission to try. That's for him to decide. And it would be good to have a seal master actually look over what he was being taught. Just in case the fox was playing the long game from an angle he hadn't anticipated. His smile only wavered slightly before reasserting itself. Thanks, Gigi. You're the best. At that moment, the door slammed open and Iruka rushed in. Hokage-sama. Mizuki was arrested, and I think Naruto is missing. Hi Iruka-sensei. It appears, Naruto, that your presence has been missed. Iruka rushed over and quickly checked him for injuries. Naruto. What happened? I heard that you were seen with Mizuki, but I couldn't find you anywhere. Oh. So my clones dispelled themselves already. Yeah. He told me about a secret, different way to graduate, but he was lying, so I beat him up with the new jutsu I learned from that scroll. He pointed at the case. Iruka paled and looked at the Hokage nervously. Hiruzen just nodded. Don't worry. It was nothing too dangerous for the boy to learn, given his situation. The multi-shadow clone jutsu was only classified as a kenjutsu due to its extensive chakra cost. He blinked in surprise. Shadow clones? But clones were the only thing that he seemed to have any significant trouble with at the academy. Hiruzen gave him a significant look. Those with naturally large chakra reserves often have great trouble with chakra control. Naruto cleared his throat nervously, looking at his teacher. So, if that wasn't the secret way to pass, I still have to go back to the academy next year, don't I? After a quick glance at the Hokage, Iruka smiled. Well, they weren't conventional clones, and they were a little late, but I think it counts, don't you? Of course, beating up a Chunin had a little to do with his opinion of Naruto's ability to become a ninja, but he wasn't about to tell that to the boy and give him any ideas. Even stealing the scroll might have done it, really. But he couldn't be too sure that the Hokage hadn't just let him take it. He liked Naruto himself, but the Hokage tended to like him a little more than what was safe. Sure, Iruka had quite a bit more perspective on Naruto's behavior than he did when Naruto first entered his class, but he wouldn't have even trusted himself with such an object as a kid. Not to mention what Mizuki the traitor could have done with it. But seeing Naruto's shining eyes looking up at him, he could kind of understand. Come on, kid. Let's go get some ramen. This is a big moment, don't you think? Iruka was impressed. It was of course, to be expected that Naruto was particularly excited. He got to be treated by his teacher to his favorite food, and he even got his sensei's own headband. He didn't even seem to be particularly bothered that it was all scratched up and used. Iruka wasn't someone who saw the value in polishing something that would only make you more visible. In fact, if he didn't know any better, he'd say Naruto liked it even more, as his fingers traced the scrapes more than once before he actually tied it around his head. No, it wasn't that. It was what he ordered. Now, Iruka knew that Naruto loved ramen. Most of his lunches were ramen, and he even knew from the Hokage himself that this was his favorite restaurant, as well as the only one that would have him. But when he asked for custom toppings, they were rather strange. Not necessarily bad. Just strange for a 12-year-old. Especially since Iruka knew what food pills were made of. They certainly would be a bit of a strange combination. Even Tucci looked surprised. Well, that was more likely due to the fact that Naruto only ate 3 bowls, even when it was all being paid for. But Iruka knew a little of why they might be a little more filling. It was just as well, because those bowls were at least twice as expensive as normal. Naruto, what you did was impressive, and you do deserve to graduate, but I don't want you to do something like that again, do you hear me? Naruto looked up from his bowl. Ha. Okay, yeah. If you had come to me and talked about it, we could have avoided this whole thing. He sighed. Yeah. I feel a little stupid about all this. I mean, to even get that scroll thing, I had to disable a whole load of seals, and I know that's something you didn't teach in class. I should have stopped then, but I just couldn't give up, you know. Everybody respects ninja, and Naruto glanced at Iruka's worried expression, and seemed to understand almost immediately. I know, what's inside me. I know why everybody doesn't like me. But if I'm a ninja, or maybe only once I become Hokage, it's a chance, you know. I have to take it. I have to show people I can do it. Protect everyone, you know. Maybe people will like me then. Iruka opened his mouth slightly, a little unsure what to say. Eventually he just leaned in and gave a small hug. Naruto gasped softly. I'm sure I've been nothing but your overly strict teacher. But just remember that you still have people that look out for you, Naruto. Remember that for me, okay? Alright, Iruka-sensei. I will. Naruto's smile didn't show his teeth, but he kept it all the way until he tucked himself into bed. Naruto was not a morning person, and that did not change during his years at the academy. It took him at least 30 minutes to wake fully. So in order to not be late to class every single day he attended, he compensated by starting the process earlier. It didn't make the process any more fun, but it helped him get yelled at less often. It also helped him actually wake up early enough to catch something for breakfast if he forgot the night before. Which was an embarrassingly common occurrence. He couldn't even blame Kurama for not reminding him, since he never actually had to eat anything, even when he wasn't sealed. He just liked to. But right now, he was cursing that habit, since he didn't actually have class. In fact, he wouldn't even be assigned a Jounin sensei until the day after tomorrow. Come on, Kit. We have work to do. Naruto groaned. Training again? Can't I have one day off? I thought you would be excited to get rid of that crappy handbag. Naruto found himself very suddenly upright in bed. You think I'm ready? You tell me. Now come on and grab a clean scroll. Unless you want to eat first. His earlier fatigue was completely clear, and with a single bounce on the mattress, pushed himself not just into an upright position, but at a decent pace toward his ninja gear. No, no. I can eat later. I've been waiting way too long for this already. The scroll Naruto had reserved for this purpose wasn't all that big. Weight was always a precious commodity for ninja on the move. Or at least that's what Kurama kept telling him every time he complained about carrying his bag. Water was especially difficult, and the most often needed on a mission. So a canteen of the stuff was going to be the first accessible sealed item. More could be added later. Which was kinda the other reason for using a small scroll. He had several places to strap them on his outfit as needed. Unfortunately, he had to carry all his extra exploding tags the traditional way. Storing a seal in another seal was not a good idea, to say the least. Even with the inactive ones, he didn't really want to risk it. Then there was the sorts of items that didn't really need to be on hand all the time, but were useful if something went wrong. Those went in there too. Like fire-starting materials. Or a sleeping bag. A large portion of waterproof cloth. Some rope. Food pills in case he had to travel somewhere that didn't have anything readily available to eat. And finally, he added some spots for extra shuriken and kunai. Which he currently did not own, other than a few dozen of each in rather cruddy condition that he swiped from training fields over the years. And a few of better quality he snuck out of class when they were practicing with real weapons. We'll go shopping later, Naruto. Go snipe a bird or something for breakfast. You're supposed to complete your registration in less than an hour. Right. So there was a deadline today. Thanks, Kurama. I completely forgot about that. Naruto rolled up the scroll and tucked it into one of the straps he had sewn to the front of his uniform, slipping the brush into the receptacle on his arm. He smirked. All right. Let's do this. Naruto, you need a shower. Ah, come on. The actual registration process was easier than Naruto was expecting. A lot less annoying, too, given the fact that paperwork was involved. But Kurama made sure he always knew things like his height, weight, and stuff like that. Something to do with training, he didn't bother to pay that much attention. And Kurama hadn't yelled at him for it, so it probably didn't matter that he didn't know the reason. The rest of the questions were a weird kind of personality test, but that was also kinda easy, since it wasn't like he was trying to be somebody else. And there was an official photo thing to be put on the graduation yearbook thing. It was just as stuffy as all the other years, but this one was more important or something. He wore Iruka's headband for that one. Oh, and Gigi's stupid grandson tried to do a sneak attack in the middle of everything. Okay, maybe he's not stupid, just really annoying. It's his teacher that's stupid. I hope he doesn't pick up his teacher's stupidness. But he still had the rest of the day to do a proper shopping trip. Naruto hadn't really had one of those for a long time. Maybe once or twice he went out to buy some milk, or sometimes he ran out of ramen for school lunches, which wasn't often, he bought in bulk. Maybe he bought some ink or paper. None of those were particularly expensive. Even his visits to Ichiraka Ramen were infrequent enough that his Gamachan was quite full from his monthly stipend. Enough where he had to store some of his money elsewhere. And he needed the money. Proper ninja tools were not inexpensive. He wasn't even being overcharged, either. The Kunoichi merchant was actually nice to him for some reason. Plus, he watched other ninja buy their stuff, and it was the same as the prices he was being told. So he wasn't being obtuse just because she was pretty. Of course, he was buying everything with the highest possible quality metal. And in triplicate. So Gamachan was already getting pretty empty. Naruto was starting to understand Kurama's insistence that he not go out to eat whenever he could afford it. No, Kit, I just said that so your special reward would remain something special. Oh. Naruto's eyes drifted over the rest of the merchandise. There were several weapons shops like this one that catered to the village's largely ninja population, but this was the one that Kurama recommended to him. In retrospect, that might have been why the shopkeeper seemed so nice. Kurama seemed really good at reading people. But passing over all sorts of weapons that he had absolutely no training in, his attention drifted almost immediately as soon as he saw seal script. Hey, how much do the paper bombs cost? He had at least 50 in his pocket already, but he was curious. If his money ran out this fast, he might want to sell some stuff eventually. The woman chuckled. Sorry, but you need a license to use those. Naruto's mouth fell open. Wait, I was just told that they couldn't be sold to academy students. She looked at him strangely. Well, yes. That would be the natural thing to do. Naruto shook his head. No, what I mean is, I've been making my own for years. Naruto grabbed a literal handful from his pocket. Where do I get this license thingy? The woman paled, staring at his hand. Naruto shoved them back in. Don't worry, none of these are charged. I only do that if I think I'll need to use them. She let out a silent breath. Just, ask around at the administration building. I'm sure someone there will help you. Naruto quickly took his new purchases and left before things got any more awkward. Kurama. Why didn't you tell me about any of this? Stealing a few chipped kunai is fine and all, but I don't want to be arrested. Don't blame me, brat. How would I know about stuff like that? This time, registration was not nearly as simple. Neither was the paperwork. Neither was explaining to half the building that he had been handling large amounts of explosives for years. Practically every person he talked to left a few shades lighter. Fortunately, in Kurama's opinion, despite needing a separate license, all that was needed was a short written test on the proper handling of the bombs. Naruto still hated it, but the fox thought it was a good thing, overall, that they had not asked for a practical demonstration. Naruto liked to be creative in his use of the things. Creative enough where he was sure that the higher-ups would be a lot more hesitant about the little Jinchuriki having access to the things. More than they already were, at least. Nobody quite forgot the days where he incessantly pranked the entirety of Konoha. The Hokage, when contacted, just smiled with a twinkle in his eye. Bastard. What? Nothing. He did learn that explosive tags, charged, that is, were actually rather expensive. Most genin didn't bother with more than a few for that very reason. So the test for handling them was very dull and very stupid. Kurama helped him through it by wording things in a less stupid way. In the end, the test was equally annoying for both of them. It also ate up the rest of the day getting someone willing to proctor the test. It was Iruka, by the way. On his day off. He did not appreciate the complaining. He did, however, appreciate being given a stack of the things on the way out. Incidentally, this was how he figured out how expensive explosive tags were supposed to be.